Hello, mis cielitos, and welcome back. Coco is here, and I am doing the final of the extras for Raging Loop. So, as you may have noticed, I've been kind of slow with this and uploads in general, even though I've been trying to take a break from streaming specifically to catch up on the backlog. But life has just been too busy, and initiative has been very difficult, and with winter coming up, I feel that's just gonna get more difficult. So while I had been debating maybe showing some of the extras that you get throughout the story, as they said, there's now a bonus feature having completed the game that will sort of give more insight into the characters and what's going on at the time, give you more of their thoughts. I'd been debating whether to do that, and ultimately I decided I'm not going to because of how difficult it has been. But also, I do think that that's just a very good way to incentivize people to check the game out yourself. It seems like there's still a lot that we do not know, a lot of mysteries that we do not know that will be revealed there. And so if that's something you are interested in, I would highly encourage you to buy the game. It was fun, very much worth it. Easy to revisit if you want to, and then you can see what is going on with characters that we didn't get a chance to learn much about. But yes, with this, this will be the final episode, and I hope that I'll be able to see you on the next game that I do. I have decided that I will be getting back to streaming, even though I haven't done as much editing as I would like to, and the next game is going to be another visual novel called Coffee Talk 2, which I want to get done in order for the third installment that is going to be coming out on my birthday of next year. And then after that, it will be probably Blasphemous, which is a Metroidvania. A friend of mine called Mark bought me the game after I finished Silksong. So that will probably be on Twitch. The Coffee Talk will be on YouTube. Blasphemous, maybe I'll see, or I don't know, maybe with both of them, I'll see if I can do multi-streaming. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started with Sheep versus Stack of Reports. One's dream is another's reality. An entity viewing everything from outside the story aims to recap the incident from another viewpoint and tie up loose ends. Oh well, maybe this will give us a lot more. Report. Writer Mitsuji Misamine. Date 8/21/2003. Summary. I somehow resolved it. The end. Alright, well, it's succinct and to the point, and answers absolutely nothing. Thank you. God damn it. Did you finish your summer homework? Can't you tell just by looking? I ain't suited to writing this crap. With rights comes responsibilities. The church seeks complete compliance with those principles from its members. Yeah, I know. Reporting on Jinx-like activities and joint suppression, was it? It's necessary. I get that. Still, don't change that this ain't really my thing. Man, I wish a meteor would fall on my head. In a summer vacation mood, are we? It's easy once you get used to it. I gotta take care of this to get used to it. But I need to be used to it so I can take care of this. It's such a pain. You sure it isn't the idea of contacting your ex again that's got you all bothered? Oh, so I'm right. No, that's part of it, but I just really hate reading and writing shit. True. After all, it doesn't look like you read that preliminary report I worked so hard to write. Sorry.
随分な重に背負わされてるのはよく理解してるし。
I'm worried about you. I know what it's like to have so much dumped on you right after joining.
でも、情報の優位性っていうのは、こういうミッションの時には絶対に確保しとくべきなんだから。
But it's during missions like these that information priority must be preserved at all costs. You know what? Let me check something again, because... The church. But it's during missions like these that information priority must be reserved at all costs. You're right. I'll keep that in mind.
ちょっとコーヒー入れてくるわ。その後ちょっと見てあげる。
I'll go brew some coffee. I'll take a look afterwards. Wait, no, I'd feel bad.
遠慮しないで。自助努力が推奨されるとはいえ、無理難題で苦しめるのはうちの本分じゃないんだから。
No need to hold back. Though we recommend self-supporting endeavors, it's not our duty to suffer over unreasonable demands.
あなたのお目付け役として必要な助けはするつもり。じゃ、待っててね。
I plan to provide help when you need it as your watchdog. Wait there, okay? After her blindingly white superior left, Mitsuji Misamine let out a deliberately loud sigh. Wait? He'd expected grumbling would make a difference in an organization like this, but appeared to have no effect. In actuality, as a member of their active force, she had plenty of experience with recon and reports. It wasn't her lack of literary talent or her ex-boyfriend Haruaki Fusaishi, or whatever his real name was, that was the problem. It was figuring out how to write the report while keeping her power hidden. Okay. With the way they were talking, I was kind of assuming that her superior was looped in. Mitsuji Misamine was the sheep. Or rather, Mitsuji Misamine was a name she'd simply given to herself as a play on Hitsuji, or sheep. In reality, her true name was simply Sheep. As the name indicated, she lived in a very peculiar environment until recently. Though her current environment was pretty peculiar on its own, after all, normal people were completely unaware of the church. But the sheep's existence was heretical, even to them. She needed to hide her true nature even within the already concealed church, okay? They had unnatural powers. Here, unnatural powers refer to things that would be generally considered superpowers or magic. Supernatural powers right out of the realm of fiction. Those powers thought only to exist in fantasy did in fact actually exist. In a sense, anyway. These superpowers assumed to exist in a certain sense were known by many different names. From the perspective of the church, they were called jinxes. The church claimed that jinxes were superpowers born of beings isolated from human socialization. It was hard to understand when written like this, because the church often explains using a cult and a Rain Man as an example. There was a man who seemingly brought rain to any event he participated in. This left an impression on the group, who began treating him as a genuine rain-bringer. A cult showcased superpowers within itself. Until the cult was exposed from the outside, these superpowers were treated as the real deal. Even if they were rules that defied common sense and accepted science, there were cases where those separated from human relations could adopt those rules. Therefore, jinxes were those superpowers that existed via this agreement to abandon common sense, also known as a contract. That didn't mean that jinxes were a mere game of make-believe. Rather, jinxes were a definitive phenomenon and threat to the ones who'd executed a contract. But as a result of their nature, jinxes could not be scientifically proven nor debunked. In the first place, it was inherent to jinxes that people who want to prove them themselves got repelled from human relations at the earliest stage. That was why the church advocated for separating the events of the world of jinxes from normal society, resolving them, and covering them up. This mindset was incompatible with the congregation, who called for harmony between jinxes and normal humans, and the parliament, who wished to rule peacefully using jinxes. Alright, this is so much. That was why the academia, whose goal was to study what jinxes were and discuss them, were the dominant faction. There were many passing pre-existing religious fundamentalists and destructive ideology groups that opposed the four. Jinx society was spread all across the globe, their numbers said to be in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands. And naturally, due to their nature of being isolated relationships, there were millions out there that remained undiscovered by Jinx society. This world did not adhere to common sense as well as people thought it did. An opinion shared by those who knew about jinxes. Jinxes could include any unusual abilities as long as those who knew about them acknowledged them. From magical abilities out of storybooks, like breathing fire and shooting lightning to show illusions and altering reality, the possibilities were limitless. Generally, it was believed that the less a person adhered to common sense, the more absurd jinxes they could acknowledge, or be acknowledged by. Therefore, there was a trend of describing jinxes with the simple phrase, superpowers born from twisted personalities. When put that way, Mitsuji believed that as long as others were as twisted as her, it wasn't strange for them to have those powers. And why do you consider yourself twisted? It wasn't just her. It was them. Most of them had been forced to scatter, and she was sure the majority of them had been killed. She had been lucky. That, or clever. For she had managed to survive not by fighting, but by choosing to flee. Thus, she needed to keep giving her all, so she could survive. So she could prolong her fortune. The moment she reached out to her keyboard, she felt a pair of hands from behind gently overlap her own. She thought her heart was going to stop. She hadn't felt that presence at all. White hands. Long, white sleeves. The superior of ambiguous age she had just been speaking with. The woman's fingers moved, making Mitsuji type the following words like a puppet master. Summary. I, Mitsuji Misamine, a survivor of the Salvation Pasture Project, prevented a disaster of biblical proportions.
心配しないで。
Don't worry. A stifled voice caressed her neck.
気づいているのは多分私だけ。あるいは私のようにことを大きくするつもりのない子たちだけ。
I'm probably the only one who's realized it. That, or kids who don't plan to make a big deal out of it, like me.
もちろん、こんなものは提出しない。大丈夫。ただし、私には全てを話してちょうだい。あなたを守るために。
We won't submit something like this, of course. It's fine. But tell me everything, so I can protect you. When did you realize it? And don't give me that protection crap. The church you belong to was the group who allowed the academia to carry out their culling. What definition of shelter or concealment do you even have?
あなたを守るだけで精一杯だった。
It's taking everything we have to protect you.
それだけ家畜のインパクトは大きいのよ。組織だっては守れないほどにね。
That's just how big of an impact the cattle have. So much so that we can't protect them unilaterally. Yeah, that figures. But can't you see that's even more of a reason why I can't trust you guys?
ええ、信用はしない方がいいわ。私だってあなたのことが大っぴらになるようなことになれば、かばいはしないから。
Yes, and you're better off not doing so. Even I wouldn't stick up for you if your existence went public.
さも知らなかったかのように、羊を見つけたと言って追い立てる側に回るでしょうね。
We would probably join those prodding you and say that we'd found the sheep like we never even knew you.
まあ、ショックのあまり手が滑るとか、何かを見落とすとかはするかもしれないけど。
Well, we could say that we were so shocked that we let you slip through our fingers, or that we overlooked you. Sure, you should be saying all this.
上の監視手段は眠らせてきた。ここは安全よ。
I disabled the surveillance. This place is safe. Wouldn't that be, telling in itself, though? They'd be like, why'd you do that? What even are you?
教会もそれなりに含まれんよ。そこで生き延びるためには、いろいろ知っておかないと。
Even the church is its own little hotbed for demons. You need to learn a lot to survive there. Why are you going so far? Got a reason.
家畜の能力の有用性、10年後を見越したパワーバランスの計画、あとはあなたに個人的に興味がある不足？
The usefulness of the power of the cattle. The Power Balance Project. Expected to go into play in 10 years. And because I have a personal interest in you. Is that not enough? Sure as hell ain't. There wouldn't be a need for massacres if those were the reasons.
あなたは政治が分かってない。核兵器は加戦するから意味があるの。
You don't understand politics. Nuclear weapons have significance because they're oligopolized. Now she understood. The cattle, who knew only great misfortune and therefore possessed extremely powerful jinxes, easily numbered over 100, including the actual candidates. If they had been carelessly scattered, there was a risk of an all-out war, but there was also a chance that their threat level would fade if they grew obsolete. They could function as a threat precisely because there were so few survivors. As such, they had been culled until there was a select few left alive. Ugh, I feel sick.
繰り返すけど、そこまでしないと、あなたをここまで連れてくることもできなかった。
As I said, we couldn't have brought you here unless some drastic measures were taken.
世界の救済を執行する、逸脱者を作り出そうとする試み、救いの牧場計画。
The Salvation Pasture Project was an experiment that tried to create deviants who would bring about the salvation of the world.
その成功例の一つであるあなたは、コンセプト上は、単独で世界を滅ぼすこともできるだけの力を秘めている。
You, one of their successes, theoretically possesses the power that could destroy the world entirely on its own.
その危険性を理解しているなら、あなただって理解できるはずよ。
If we understand that threat, surely you do too.
仲間の屍の上に生きる覚悟が必要なことくらいは。
At the very least, you need the resolve to survive on the backs of your fallen comrades. Mitsuji knew everything she was telling her was true. The kind, considerate sheep that was like a sister to her fellow cattle. She, who was once considered such by the pasture, could no longer retain such a convenient position anymore. She knew that. It was just hard to accept, that was all. So she said it again. I feel sick. The origin of the Fujiyoshi incident was a fairly standard story. It's the normal kind of activity you see in any group. You look for isolated relationships and investigate whether there's an unknown jinx involved. Unfortunately, most of the time there is. In your preliminary investigation, you detected traces of reality alteration, and so you sent me, someone with a similar type of power.
そうね。教会はあなたのことを限定的な現実改変能力者だと考えていたから。
Yes, because the church believed you possessed a limited reality alteration power. She talked like she didn't have one herself. Mitsuji wanted to ask her where she found a lead on her, but decided to save that for later. Yeah, that was the pretext you gave, but in actuality, you covered her real power too.
植松里香子。彼女への尋問の記録には全部目を通したわ。
I looked over all the questioning records for Rikako Uematsu.
安息の地を地獄めいた夢に求めた土雲2000数百年の怨念。まさかそんなに大きな話だとはね。
She sought a place of repose in a hellish dream, and carried the grudges of the 2,000-year-old Tsuchigumo. Never thought it'd be that huge a story. I just can't see her being safer than the cattle.
仕方ないでしょ。今の彼女からは証言されるような強さの魔性が検出されなかったんだから。
Nothing we can do. We couldn't detect any sort of strong diabolicity from her testimony. They referred to a warped humanity that could form the basis of a jinx as a diabolicity.
今の彼女はちょっとばかりひねくれたクールな知女ってとこかしら。その程度で教会は命を取らないわよ。
Right now, she's just a slightly twisted, cool-headed pervert. The church wouldn't kill her over that. Well, anyway, for good or for ill, we were compatible. I could exploit a gap in her reality alteration to intervene with my ability.
何をしたの？
What did you do? The moment reality became a dream, I accessed my and that idiot's memories, and shoved them into my and that idiot's heads. That, and the reason he kept his memories, it was because they were linked to his soul, or something like that, I guess. Well, it's merely a consolation of mind.
なるほど。彼が事件解決に主要な役割を果たす手助けをしたのね。ちなみに、彼が居合わせたのは本当に偶然なのね。
I see. So he played a major role in aiding with the resolution of this incident. By the way, was it really just a coincidence that he happened across you? Yeah, if it weren't, I would have quit this job even if it involved killing myself.
本当かしら。なんだかんだで、あなたは見捨てられないタイプに見えるけど。
I wonder. You just don't seem the type who can just abandon everything.
とにかく、たまたまあなたが夢使いで、たまたま彼と現地で再会したから、うまく事件解決ができたってわけね。
So anyway, because you just so happened to be a dream wielder, and because you just happened to reunite with him, the incident was brought to a peaceful close. Mitsuji lazily nodded. The concept of the sheep and the cattle was to bring salvation through dreams. The concept itself wasn't all that new. If they could show all of mankind a blissful dream, they could attain salvation in their minds. Mankind's interests contain complicated self-contradictions. Achieving universal bliss by optimizing everyone's interests was difficult. Impossible, I would say. So there were two easy methods conceived. Either alter people's values and standardize them, or separate them and satisfy them individually. The former was a common idea that had been attempted to be achieved throughout human history via religion, culture, and morals. The latter was an idea that had shown up in sci-fi and such over the past few decades as the development of computer networks progressed. Mitsuji's power was the epitome of the latter. If they could show every human in the world their own blissful dream, all of mankind would attain bliss. But, I don't know, there's still something so fundamentally wrong about that, but I don't really know. I mean, it's kind of like a Matrix situation, isn't it? Everyone was put into a perfect dream, and I mean, I guess I only ever saw the first one. There's the whole alien aspect that wouldn't be relevant here, in which they're being used, but I don't know, I just question the merit of something so fake. I don't know how I personally would feel about something like that, and I feel that at a point. I guess I also would question, are we still having normal human lifespans? I'm going off on a tangent and I'm kind of tired, but something about that doesn't sit right with me. Basically, she could use a power that showed others in a very wide range a specific dream. You could make dreams of all types and could read others' thoughts and memories through the dream, albeit in an incomplete fashion. That skill and subtlety was her true strength. However, there was another method of using dreams. When dreaming, a dreamer is under the illusion that everything happening is real. No matter how crazy things got inside, it was possible not to realize it was a dream, and as long as they didn't, the dream was endlessly real to its observer. However, there were also Jinx users who could do unrealistic things that could make the observer want to believe it was a dream. Thus, it was possible to alter reality through dreams. The observer could take the reality they didn't want to believe and swap it for one they did. Dream writing, a reality alteration / frustration phenomenon that used denial of supernatural phenomena. It was different from standard reality alteration in the dream wielder could repair any reality they desired by merely attaining approval. For example, the reason Mitsuji had been able to repair the convenience store and all the items Haruaki had requested was because those were small-scale reality alterations via dreams. She had told the church that her Jinx was nothing more than that, an ability to let her create a base and supplies. It was a handy power to possess, but it did have its limits. She couldn't produce unlimited food to ration off forever, and though she could produce lifeboats, it would be difficult to produce a nuclear weapon. Basically, she couldn't attain agreement between the customer and herself to produce anything that definitely couldn't exist in the storage room. Because of this, reality alteration on a small scale was far from perfect, and all sorts of roadblocks had come up regarding the implementation. Say nothing of a long-range reality alteration. Creating a single dream that everyone affected could agree upon was next to impossible. In the end, it was a case filled with many self-contradictions, to the point of nigh impossible as a way to make everyone happy. Therefore, to Jinx users, long-range reality alteration was considered to be, ironically enough, unrealistic. Or so it should have been. But this time was different. Kaku Omatsu was a Jinx user who specialized in altering reality via dreams. For example, her spiritual healing was essentially the power to bring her real self closer to her idealized self in the dream. If you ask me, using the roundabout image of a spider or something to bring that out was wasteful. Her true fearsome power was to erase that wastefulness without hardship.
真に恐れるべき能力
True fearsome power? Yeah, that spider's astonishing perception and calculation. A deity given constant justification by folding in 1,000 years' worth of countless ancestors' grudges. It's basically a powerful neurological computer. By running the dream manipulation power in parallel to it, the data processing ability of the former bear of the spiders would be beyond imagination. Of course, it's still difficult to devise an ideal dream through pure calculations, so she came up with a different method.
それが巻き戻りだったの
You mean the loop? Yeah. By completely recording the state of a fixed area and fixed observers at a certain moment in time, like tearing it out of reality.
カメラみたいに
Or like a camera. Yes, but it's not just images. It's an extraordinary power that records everything happening in that world at that moment. The spider could pull that off and create extremely detailed dreams of the past. So long as it's past they've experienced, anyone can accept it. In other words, a state where everything you worked hard on all day was just a dream.
漫画とかでいう夢落ちを強制的に発生させる
So it forcibly creates a dream world, like one straight out of a manga. Yeah, you can think of it like that. Like I said, even that's one hell of a story.
それは理解できたわつまり
I can understand. So basically,
彼女をもってしても土雲の復活に足りるだけの糧ややこだっけ
even with that power, she couldn't create a dream.
あれを都合よく全部回収したぞってな夢を作ることはできなかった
Where she could conveniently gather all the nourishment children, she put it, needed to revive the Tsuchigumo.
だからあの集落でたまたま文化的に継続していた殺人慣習を利用して自分以外の住人の全滅を狙った
Therefore, she made use of the murder ritual the village's culture just so happened to have and aimed for the deaths of everyone but herself.
でも彼女はそのために世界すべてを巻き戻してたわけじゃないんでしょ
But it's not like she made the whole world loop back for that, right? Exactly. She would have needed a much larger camera for that. And that would be unrealistic.
そうよねあなたの理屈だと
True, and that's your theory. The infinite loop Haruaki and I were put through actually occurred in the spider's dream. It was basically a simulation. He let all the characters roam freely from the initial save point. And if the initial failure conditions were met, he retried the dream from the start.
そして最終的にいい結果が出た時だけその夢を現実と差し替える
And only when she eventually got a good result would she switch that dream for reality. Right. So even when we were going through that hell of a loop, not a single second passed in reality. And that was also due to the spider's incredible calculation ability. It really is fortunate that it failed.
まったくね
Indeed. Another bit of cleverness on Rikaku Uematsu's part was setting her own death as the trigger for setting off the alteration. Since she herself had to be immersed in the dream, there's no question that was the best way to go about it.
ああ彼女は確か証言してたわね
Yeah, she testified as much.
土雲の現世の復活には地獄の入り口だというサラナ川や霧のシチュエーションが必須だったって
He said the entrance to hell known as Saranagawa and the mists were needed to resurrect the Tsuchigumo. Yeah, when you consider the circumstances that brought about the jinx and what it wanted to achieve, it's no wonder she needed to go through such a troubling procedure. But it meant she couldn't just watch over the dream from a safe place. She needed to stand on alert in the killing grounds. It seems she could have set active resets she could use whenever it looked like she was going to fail, but that'd make her unable to counter deadly surprise attacks. In that case, there would have been an off chance that the dream where she died would feed back into reality. And even if she could return to reality, there was no telling how long she would have had to wait in the real world until she could restart the dream. Exactly how many times did she loop again? Oh god.
17,6201回らしいわよ。
If she's telling the truth, 176,201 times. Even if it only took her a second to reset in the real world, repeating that many loops would mean it would have taken over 2 whole days, more or less.
彼女、儀式発動には丸1日かかったとも証言してたわね。
She testified that it took a whole day to invoke the ritual. You kidding me? It took that long each time. 400 years would have passed in the real world. That's impossible. So, the Tsuchigumo of dreams, who existed partially independently, automatically looped once it detected its life had ended.
それで復活に必要な手続きをするために夢を出る必要はなくなり、ほぼ0時間でリセットをかけられるようになった。
Thus, it no longer needed to dream in order to resurrect, and could reset practically instantly.
その上、自分の死という絶対失敗条件が発生した後は、迅速にやり直しが発生する無駄のないスキームが完成した。
On top of that, she completed a wasteless scheme where she could promptly try all over again after the absolute failure condition. Her death was met. Exactly.
賢いわね。
Clever. No, it may have been a clever setup, but she made a foolish mistake. She ignored those who started taking irregular actions right after the looping began.
芹沢千恵美とあなたの元彼のことね。
You mean Chiemi Serizawa and your ex-boyfriend, right? Don't say that too much. Anyway, those two weren't originally supposed to be there. Memories were kept outside of the reality alteration by the spider, and no one except for itself was supposed to retain those memories. Yet not only did it not view them with suspicion, but it also invited them, so they could bring about the desired result. And that's not the way a dream wielder fights. A dream wielder dominates precisely because they have complete control over the dream. The role of a demon lord. The spider should have driven Haruaki and Chiemi out of the dream, or killed them at the starting point each time. It should have also striven to bring about the best results through its own efforts. But instead, she wished for a knight in shining armor. She messed with the starting point just to change the characters in the story. As a result, Haruaki was drawn in. It all went to waste. If it weren't for that foolishness, we probably would have lost.
あなたがそこまで言うならよほどだったのね。
It must have been a big deal if you're saying all that. You get it. This was a vengeful creature over 2,000 years old. It's on a whole different league from us fledglings from the Salvation pasture. And even though it didn't know a thing about jinxes, it came from a bloodline that refined its ability to monstrous efficiency. I'm sure that jinxes on this level are rare, but still, I'm saying this one was no joke. How many incidents as big as this are gonna happen in this country in the future?
まあ、私自身はそういうのは3回くらいかな。
Well, I've dealt with about 3 of them myself.
不幸な人はいるし、そのうちの何割かは危険な力を持って社会に復讐しようとするわけよ。珍しいことじゃないわ。
There are unfortunates with dangerous powers who try to use them to get revenge on society. It's not uncommon.
教会で働いてると、そういうのからは逃げられないからね。あなたにも今後、せいぜい助けてもらおうと思うわ。
You can't avoid those when you work for the church. I'm thinking of having you help me out with those. Nope, not happening. I'd be devoting myself to career jobs and logistical support. Thank you.
ま、表向きはそうした方がいいわね。ただ、あなたのポテンシャルを私は正確に知っておきたい。
Officially, that will indeed look good for you. But I want a full picture of your potential.
あなた、解決の直前に相当危ない瞬間があったみたいなこと言ってたわよね。何があったの？教えて。
You mentioned that there was a relatively dangerous moment right before the incident was resolved. Tell me what happened. Mitsuji hesitated. It would be like revealing an ace up her sleeve. And I think we will go ahead and end the episode right here. Thank you all so very much for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful time zone wherever you are, and as always, please do take care of yourselves and each other. Toodaloo-hoo!